Even though the shadow shouted loudly, it was truly pathetic. Very quickly, the two hot items collided loudly with each other. The demon's pressure was not simple, causing Hinmo to widen his eyes in surprise and not have time to struggle, scream and throw himself several meters back. Inside, he silently cursed helplessly, "Damn, he's too strong." At that moment, a stream of blue magic spread out from the wand and spread out all around. The voices of his teammates rang out teasing Hinmo. He wanted to pretend to be cool, but unfortunately, all it took was one hit and he was blown away. As expected of our captain, Hinmo fell backwards into the aura of the Dharma pants and successfully did not end up with a lump on his butt on the ground, otherwise the countryside would have known. Too surprised, he lowered his eyes to check. Then the whole team said loudly in unison, "We are waiting for you," making his funny heart skip a beat hesitantly calling out, "Everyone, everyone." Hinmo looked excitedly at the team and asked loudly, "This is really a demon but it's okay, don't be afraid, let's show it our unrivaled superpower." The black-haired teenager heard the captain's loud voice, spreading delusion to the entire team. Now everyone has an illusion of the power to shout and scream, so they stay silent and don't dare to give any advice. Eun-jo looked up at the demon and assessed, "If we came here with my group, everything would be too easy." Hwa-eun continued in a serious voice, "We can't do anything. We have to be happy that we got in here before the demon escaped from the gate." The fighting spirit of Kong-gu's team members was heightened and they spoke in unison. "We will stop it here." Hinmo arrogantly twirled his knife and humorously compared, "Between El Cuero and the devil, I don't know which one is stronger." Tom looked at everyone taking a stance and getting ready for battle. It seemed like Kong Ji-yu had an attitude of some kind of fear. Oriax seemed a bit tired, standing with a straight face until the bald man ran and called after him, urging him, "Oh immortal. Let's show those humans the power of today." The warm demon said, "I'm planning to do whatever I regret." Saying that, it rolled its eyes and bared its sharp teeth as if looking at the group of humans. Hinmo also glared back. He had teammates to protect him, so there was no need to be shy. Oriax looked up and down at the humans for a bit, then flapped his wings and shouted, "You guys don't even deserve to face me anymore. Is there no one stronger? Is there really no better candidate?" Is he scolding with all his heart? Oriax suddenly stopped and discovered something strange. Who is that black-haired guy standing in the middle with his head down and clearing his throat? The demon's eyes widened, its mouth was full of questions but it held back. Its two-horned head tried to operate at full loading capacity. The demon Oriax in the 7th level of hell literally stood there with his face blankly in utter disbelief. That made the entire Kangoo team stare at it with their heads filled with questions, but the black-haired youth was different. He was sweating profusely, trying not to look at Oriax, screaming in his heart, "Ah damn! How could he summon a real demon with so many without calling?" At that time, he wished he wasn't a normal Okangu or wished he lost his memory so he could change his head immediately. Fans remember, among the levels of hell, the deepest level is the 9th level. That is where the Lord of Hell resides, the Demon Castle. The owner of the Demon King Castle defeated the 7 great officials who once ruled over all demons, also known as the Great Predator, Lord Eternal Lord. And the person sitting on that throne in cool iron armor is none other than the Demon King. It's the heroic past that this black-haired guy, puffing his cheeks and pretending to be stupid, wants to hide. It's true that he wants to have a fight with a strong opponent, but being strong enough to be a Demon King is giving him too much credit. Oriax's attitude immediately turned 360 degrees. His eyes widened in horror, his mouth wide open and he screamed in agony. "What? Why is he here, my lord?" Snot and water splashed everywhere. Oriax was so shocked that he didn't want to maintain any image anymore. Kong Ji-yu has lived for 100,000 years and has never seen an obstacle like this one. He turned around and covered his face with his hands, but that demon still recognized him, then stood there dumbfounded, stuttering, "What are you?" The young man grumbled and grumbled, "There are so many ghosts. How come the name that knows my face appears?" Seeing Oriax standing still, his whole body shaking like a person with Parkinson's disease, the incomprehensible guy hesitantly asked, "Excuse me. Great Lord Orcs. The demon that was called back suddenly woke up and turned back, gritting its teeth and hanging on. It's me, you're the one who yelled at that guy. Hey, that person. Please come back quickly. What's going on over there? He was so dumbfounded. He hadn't even fought yet and wanted to go back. It was a star. Orcs didn't wait for the Joker to say anything else and rushed forward. He teased it and it grabbed it with both hands and shook it back and forth. Screaming with straight mouth, I don't want to fight that monster. I will return to hell. Cancel the summoning and take me back to my original place quickly. The guy was shaken to the point of shaking his bones. He woke up when he heard that he wanted to go back. What's going on? He begged, you cannot return, but please do not worry, Great Orcs. Saying that, he looked at the Kangoo squad and sarcastically said, those people are just weak mortals. Orcs couldn't understand if this guy was crazy. His whole body kept shaking and muttering, are mortals weak? The demon mustered up the courage to look at Kangoo again. Is that weak yet? This time Orcs seemed to go crazy, screaming loudly, this idiot, you don't know anything. You have absolutely no idea who you're facing. The tiger doesn't roar. Do you really think it's Hello Kitty? Seeing Orcs roar and scold him so much that he couldn't help but facepalm, the whole team suddenly burst into whispers. What's wrong? That demon is arguing with the cultist. Should we take advantage of this opportunity to attack? Kangoo stepped forward and said loudly, leave it to me. Hua-un, who is readying her sword, will enjoy hearing him confidently say that. Kangoo explained briefly, it seems that demon mistook me for someone else. That's a very stupid reason why the captain was hiding his cards and still letting him advance. Orcs was tormenting the guy asking to go home when suddenly a stream of power came from somewhere, making him jump and break out in a cold sweat. It turned out that Kangoo was playing tricks. He slowly approached and coldly asked, are you Orcs? The trembling demon immediately turned around. With the cold look of a demon king, he said sternly, I order you to only use your thoughts to speak to me so that others cannot hear. Feeling a little more panicked, the giant demon poked him aside and turned around to respectfully answer, yes, I am Orcs, the demon of the 7th level of hell. Demon King. Why are you in a place like this? Quote. The young man saw the obedient demon and smiled with peace of mind. Most of his power had been sealed, but if this guy was so scared, it would be easy to deal with. Right after that, he looked like rice paper, his face cold and reproachful. He had disturbed my plan. The demon panicked for the 9th time hearing this, immediately crouched down and asked again, what is your plan? If you act, you have to act until the end. Kangoo suddenly got angry, gritted his teeth and growled, don't question me. After scolding the amateur actor, he suddenly felt a slight tickle. He didn't have a plan, but he had to act like that. Just blame Orcs for being gullible, don't bow down and apologize to him over and over again. Seeing that he had successfully lured the demon, Kangoo frowned and said in a serious voice, you suddenly appearing like this have made things complicated, but I will give you a chance to correct your mistakes. The demon was so happy that tears welled up in his eyes, nodding vigorously, I will obey all of your orders, Demon King. The amateur actor happily howled, grinned and said, that's right. If you follow this order, I will accept you as a confidant. Sincerely, Orcs was so happy that he grinned, his bright eyes flashing red lasers, from liking to loving. Becoming a confidant of the Demon King and defeating the 7 great wonders, in his mind immediately appeared the majestic image of the demon Balak, Kangoo's closest confidant when he was in hell. Being the same as it, but looking at the muscular hooves and the long, curved horns soaring high, and the power rolling over thousands of hungry ghosts, that is the highest honor. Not stopping there, Orcs also projected his imagination out into the universe. If he became one of the confidants of that day, he could receive a part of the Demon King's power. Thinking of that pink scenario, Ori the young man proudly pointed at his team and said, okay, come defeat those people without using your weapons. I want to see if you are strong enough. Having said that, Ori Kangoo saw its enthusiasm and smacked his lips, wanting to love it so much, it was so easy to trust the keeper. Over here, Un Jo wondered, Why did that demon suddenly act so strangely? Did Kangoo do something? Hua-un wasn't so sure, but according to the judgment of a certain ancient captain, this was the perfect opportunity for us. The blade in her hand flashed with golden power. Hua-un performed the southern wind move, the power of the wind billowing along with her footsteps rushing straight forward. Hua-un raised her eyebrows and looked up at the hellish demon. Ori the next second, ignoring the demon baring its fangs and claws to scare him, the beautiful woman ran straight towards him like the wind, unleashing her sword dancing skills and the power of the wind to slash hard at the demon's body. The demon screamed loudly and threatened him back. Ori, out of contempt for the enemy, X took a stab in the shoulder, screaming in pain. Its eyes flashed with ferocity. Its anger made it go crazy. It frantically waved its arms around, scolding you all, throwing insects and trash at you. The magic radiating from it made everyone step back. Defensive position. People who like golf courses like Eun-jo immediately showed discomfort, tightened the long chain, and glared at the person who said who is a worm. Having finished speaking, she cast the blood chain in her hand and rushed towards the demon. Not stopping there, Eun-jo turned around and launched another wave of blood chain towards it. This messy string combo startled Ori X. He was already wrapped tightly. Soon his whole body was being squeezed by blood chains, causing him to cry out in pain. Ori, damn, these humans are quite strong. Even if I used weapons, I'm sure I could defeat her. But thinking about this is the challenge that the Demon King has set to test his heart. Ori, seeing that each member fought solo with the demon without much success, Hua-un proactively moved forward to attack the left side. Having good chemistry with the beautiful daughter of Captain Hinmo, he is responsible for swinging his sword to attack the right side of the demon. The pair of captains used their swords to take care of the demon from head to toe, leaving on its body countless long cuts that spewed blood everywhere along with painful screams. Ori X sat down tiredly and lamented. I'm so frustrated. Maybe it's because I'm so used to using a scythe that without a weapon I can't fight properly. But all of that isn't as important as thinking, did the Demon King see through my weakness? At that time, the Demon King that it respected was gradually walking towards it with a scythe in hand. Ori, as soon as Ori X thought of this scenario, the devil was determined to use that power to wipe out the humans. Who would have thought that Kong Ji-yu would bluntly cut down the scythe from the devil's head? The fatal wound caused the demon to vomit blood immediately. It happened so fast that Ori Konggu's closing slash seemed to last forever. In the last moment before being split into two pieces by the child, he mentally interacted with the child, "Don't hate me." Because whoever believes in the lazy trick is that person's fault. His eyes are cold. He smirks happily. The hell demon fight ends here. Then a series of system messages appear congratulating you. You have successfully defeated Ori X, the demon from the 7th level of hell. You ranked first in the merit list, receiving an additional reward for being the one to strike the final blow. Your level has now reached its highest level. Based on the level limit, additional experience will be accumulated. Somewhere far away, through a live broadcast magic ball, the Cardinal was watching the whole thing. Through the thick layer of mask, Tom clearly heard a vertical stick in his mouth screaming, "Oh Kong Ji-yu." This side the system keeps announcing, based on the limit of level and experience bonus, will be accumulated. Every once in a while, receiving so many messages from the system, the young man breathed a sigh of relief, thinking how cool it was to be able to hunt demons in the 7th level of hell. So my expectations were a bit high, but it still wasn't enough. Reach level 60. Hua-un and Eun-jo hurriedly ran until the next day. Eun-jo was curious and couldn't wait and asked loudly, "Oh Kong Ji-yu, what happened? Where is the demon?" He calmly nodded to confirm it was gone. The process didn't matter, as long as the result was okay. But his heart secretly felt regretful. Leaving the body behind would be a waste. Kong Ji-yu hid his left hand behind his back to create blue-black magic that slowly spread. This greedy power was so powerful, in the blink of an eye before they realized it, the blue-black light quickly spread out to cover the demon's corpse, then sucked up all the magic power from its body. By the time Eun-jo realized it, the demon's corpse had already evaporated without leaving any trace. The chimpanzee system announced that your demon power index has been increased by 3. Just 3 points. Why are you so stingy? The demon king licked his lips hungrily and then sullenly gave up. Well, the more the stat value increases, the harder it is to earn points, so this should be fine. His eyes hardened. For someone with knowledge, experience like him, Kong Ji-yu had enough data to speculate. After the Sixth Awakening, the seal of the 100,000 magic cores had weakened and their stats did not increase much, but the demonic power emitted from it completely changed in quality and quantity. Seeing the demon's body slowly turn into thin air, Kong Ji-yu pretended to be stupid and exclaimed, "Wow, that's strange. Does the devil's body disappear after death?" The question made the whole team dumbfounded for a moment. There was no one who was an all-knowing Tom who would ask God. The blonde captain took the opportunity to grab him and poke him. He loudly asked, "Hey Wa-un, is this the red mask guy we need to find?" The beautiful woman, following her accurate observation, immediately said, "No, he's just a subordinate." Hearing her answer, Hinmo sighed and lowered his eyes regretfully. So that guy still refuses to show his face? Looking at the smooth head covered in stork tattoos, Hinmo felt itchy and immediately tapped on it, sarcastically saying, "I like to get rid of guys like this right away." He teased you like eating chili but couldn't do anything but continued to be grabbed by the neck and scolded, "You trash. Just wait there. We don't have strict control like Seoul. We have many ways to make you have to tell the truth." He was so angry that he yelled back, "You bastard." The next second, Hinmo's face turned black and cold, his eyes close to his ear, and he whispered, "Bastard, watch your mouth. Just think about what you did to my subordinates. I want to strangle you to death." In the midst of the drama, the beautiful woman Wa-un called out, "Captain Hinmo, I understand your feelings, but there is something I have to tell him to make sure he confesses his crime." Hearing his crush call, I immediately changed my shy mode and agreed. The guy was grabbed by the neck and pulled like a dog. Hearing that he was being driven out of this place by car, he got angry. But he didn't dare to open his mouth, he only dared to mumble curses. Green beans. This name is so hateful. His eyes were dilated and streaked with blood, his face was grimacing in anger, wanting to deform, gritting his teeth and squirming. If the stupid demon hadn't suddenly gone crazy, I wouldn't have been caught by a bunch of low-class people like this. At this moment, a strong desire arose in his mind. If only he had the power of that demon, everything would be different. Thinking of that, he suddenly felt a shock all over his body, his face showing blue veins. Kong Ji-yu had been observing all this time and kept seeing something wrong. It wasn't until he saw the purple-blue demon aura rising that he burst into flames. Immediately he shouted loudly in warning, backing away, "It seems we can't interrogate that guy." The blonde captain was startled and opened his mouth, gasping, looking at the guy who had already collapsed and vomited blood. Kong Ji-yu seriously explained that he had been exposed to too much demonic power and was gradually changing. Become a monster. As soon as he finished speaking, the Joker raised his head to show off his newly sprouted horns and sharp teeth and roared due to the corrosive transformation pain. Eun-jo aggressively held back the blood and ran past Kong Ji-yu, taking the initiative, so I could take care of him. The beautiful woman quickly cast the blood chain on her hand. The lake's mouth switched on its confinement mode and rushed towards the demon. The chain tightened it like a cake, leaving only its throat screaming loudly. Eun-jo triumphantly concentrated her strength to release magic to tighten the blood chain even more. Before she was done, she juggled the demon up and down like a ball. Finally, the game ended with a violent landing on the rocks in front, sending dust flying everywhere. As the dust gradually disappeared, the demon that had appeared just a few minutes ago was now nothing more than a torn suit. Kong Ji-yu stood next to Eun-jo looking at the ruins in front of him. She suddenly frowned and mumbled to herself, "Damn it." Saying that, he pulled his hat with his hands, hid his face and sighed softly, "Until we catch their leader." Kong Ji-yu just silently listened to her mumble. "I should have restrained myself and kept that guy alive so I could interrogate him, but I got angry." Then indifferently he concluded, "Who cares?" His words made her hurt heart skip a beat. immediately raised his sparkling eyes to look at Kongu. The delicate young man began to chatter comfortingly. She was doing very well. There was no need to worry. There would be more opportunities to catch them. Having said that, I looked away and eagerly looked at the information checking system. I should check my status window first. As a child, she turned around and cursed to herself that he was indeed arrogant, but the warm feeling from just now was still there. She just didn't want to admit it. As soon as the results appeared, his eyes widened and he stammered, wondering what was going on. This notification system, you are at the peak of demonic power, which is the first step to becoming a demon god. The final condition revealed was to complete condition 3, creating a demon crystal larger than a certain size. In another faraway place, the cardinal's head rested his chin and attentively watched the live stream on the magic ball, while listening to his disciples announce. The summoning ritual was successful. Congratulations, Cardinal. Owner. They happily explained further. Thanks to that, our demon sect received help. Now we can proceed with the plan. Heard about the plan to carry out spring sharing, but in his stomach he kept thinking, I don't feel happy at all. Tilting his head back and forth, he silently calculated, who would have thought that the summoned demon could be defeated so easily. But that aside, the cardinal leader spoke up and asked about the plan. They intended to help them. How are we? The junior proudly replied, of course it's with demon crystals. The amount of crystals we receive is not only enough to carry out the plan but can also make you even stronger. Hearing his younger brother say so, the cardinal's leader fell into thought. We succeeded in summoning them, so they acted more generously, but the method of helping was still the same as before. Behind the red mask, there is still an unanswered question. How was that demon defeated so easily? Baek Kong Yun frowned thoughtfully, thinking to himself, was it because of that bastard who gave the last blow? Oh, Kong Ji Yu, is the final boss of all these losses, right? Kong Yun began to deepen the chain of events. Let's see, the strongest person in Pohang should have been the Red Rose Che Eun-jo. But the day that demon saw Oh Kong Ji Yu, he started behaving erratically. When he caught me, he was like a child who didn't know anything about the real world. While thinking endlessly, the junior suddenly spoke up and interrupted. Dear Cardinal, I still have one more news to tell you. Secret information came back that rankers around the world, more specifically Furimoto Ryoma, would begin to act with help from the Japanese government. Hearing that, Kong Yun flashed in fear and stood still for a few seconds. Seeing this, his younger brother bewilderedly called out, Red, Cardinal Cardinal. Immediately after that, his entire body was covered in sauce, witnessing the leader's anger, causing the whole group behind him to scream in horror. Baek Kong Yun screamed like crazy. How dare you say something like that so calmly? It seems like you guys think that the demon crystal was stolen. The demon we summoned was squashed like a bug. The whole confrontation with Fujimoto Ryoma is something that has nothing to do with you guys, right? The guys were so scared that they wanted to pee their pants and stammered to explain. We don't have that guts, sir. Kong Yun suddenly changed his attitude 180 degrees, stood up and solemnly announced that we will cancel all current plans and change our way of doing things. His words made one of the group worriedly say, Dear Cardinal, another way you said it is? The whole group is starting to argue. That will make the whole world become our enemy. Kong Yun immediately stepped forward, grabbed that guy's neck and lifted him up high. Using his cold eyes like the angel of death, he asked in a low voice, Do you think I don't know about that? Needless to say, that guy was trembling like a plow. The soldiers behind him also had goosebumps standing on the spot listening to him. Don't make me repeat myself. Quickly go take care of what we need. Quickly prepare to use that thing in Gaishu. A few days later at the MySU metro, amidst the bustling stream of pedestrians passing by, a young brown-haired man who had just finished a few math and statistics classes was walking with tired upper legs. He lost consciousness and saw something strange in his right eye. He thought he was so tired that he turned blind. Who would have thought that after blinking continuously, he stood motionless, staring at the blanket, stammering out, That's a Stargate. A few days after the incident in Pohang, Kong Ji Yu stayed at home enjoying the peace until he was bored. Or if you want to stir up the atmosphere a little, go on an artificial roller coaster with Iona. She happily smiles and doesn't make it up to him. Her insides keep tearing up, it's too peaceful. In the end, to stir up this boring life, he decided to drive out with Si-hoon to collect crystals, but after the Po-hang incident, he did not see anything in the mind of those demon cultists. As soon as the devil was mentioned, Chae-eun-jo called. While sitting quietly, Si-hoon suddenly opened his mouth in surprise, looked at the announcement in front of him, then immediately looked over and called out, "Dude." Even though the teenager is upset, he still looks at me and asks why. Si-hoon quickly informed him that the system window had appeared. He was startled when he heard it. The car was running and wanted to leave the lane. Kong Ji-yu urgently asked, "What is it talking about?" "Ah, wait, let's pause for a moment to press the button to answer Eun-jo's phone, but immediately received a series of questions and an angry interface that made me want to smoke. Why didn't you answer the phone?" She announced that a gate had appeared in the middle of my Su station, a place with a lot of population. The scene there is very chaotic. Many strange demons pour through the gate and chase people away. Many buildings exploded, fierce flames reaching the blue sky. Someone's brave legs landed far from where the mother and child were running for help. How did the child trip over a stone and fall face down on the ground? The mother turned around in panic and shouted, "Zay-una." Just waiting for one step, the footsteps of the demons came loudly. Seeing that scene, the mother was speechless, afraid that her face would no longer have a drop of blood, so she stopped running and stayed and waited for death. Si-hoon, with the mission of the male protagonist to save the world, arrived in time to slash the demons. Looking at the mother and son, he shouted loudly, "Hide behind me and focus forward." His lips tightened in confusion. The gate opening at my SU station was not good at all. Look at the red-spotted demon on his body. Everyone has turned into a monster because of the demonic energy spreading from the crack. Saying that, he swung his sword and cut the trouble in front of him in half. Everyone around was happy to see him cheering. It was a rancor. We were saved. It was Kim Si-hoon. What about rancor? The first time he stood in front of the hideous demons, his sword hand still trembled as usual. The teenager gritted his teeth and thought to himself, these monsters just now were still normal people. Thinking of that, his eyes fluttered, and a harsh voice suddenly rang out in his brain. Kim Si-hoon listened, accompanied by Kangoo's stern eyes. The moment a person turns into a devil, they are no longer alive. Only when part of a person dies can the demons act. And once a human becomes a monster, he cannot turn back into a human again, understand? So think of them as zombies or national soldiers. His senior had clearly warned him that if he wanted to save the survivors, he didn't need to be punished. Si-hoon gritted his teeth and said yes. He had regained his composure, tightened his grip on his sword, and was ready to fight. He started with a high jump, successfully dodging the fierce demons rushing in. Suddenly Si-hoon froze for a second because the system popped up again announcing the start of the Guardians' special mission. Having killed 2,789 monsters and destroyed the fragments of the rift, he currently only has the number 1 in his hand. The reward he receives is special experience, and if he joins the team, he will be divided into points. Oh my god, there are 2,789 of them. So what kind of cemetery is this monster that you're swinging at the two sorrows, because the number of people who have turned into monsters is now approximately 3,000. The young man tightened his grip on the sword and slashed the monster clearly, screaming to calm himself. No, he had no time to think anymore. Although the demons ended up just lying in a pile of blood, there were as many of them as mosquitoes, waiting to pounce and tear him apart. After killing a few demons, Si-hoon can confidently assert that luckily they are not very strong, probably only the highest rank D. Having said that, he tightened his lips and was determined to play bloody with this hateful group. Holding the sword forward with both hands, he put all his effort into performing Cloud Dragon Foot, calling out a stream of blue power like the color of a sea of flowers rushing back into his body. At that special moment, Si-hoon seemed to become a heroic savior, wriggling his sharp blade into the crowd of demons in front of him. Too fast and too dangerous, the demons roared in pain and fell one after another like falling jackfruit. In just a few short minutes, Si-hoon finished his sword dance and successfully defeated a group of ferocious demons. At this moment, Si-hoon was not very happy. He frowned more and worried. His mind constantly urged himself to be faster, because as soon as the group of ghosts fell, another group of ghosts rushed up. He had to be faster, faster. The people who were saved did not care about fear and rushed into the streets cheering and cheering for him, making Si-hoon even more determined. You must not disappoint them. The floating chimpanzee system congratulates you. You have entered the egoless state. You have obtained the special attribute of human sword fusion. The conditions for complete transformation have been met. The hero who had just finished killing several ferocious demons stood there watching and announcing while breathing heavily. How bad? From the ghostly crack in the distance, monsters are aggressively approaching and they are constantly increasing. He simply couldn't handle it all alone. While blaming himself, a familiar voice rang in his ear. Si-hoon. He was stunned and turned his head to look, calling out to Tetsu. Thank God, his entire team included Tetsu, Eunbi and Sella. The young man was happy to discover that two more prominent members, Hwa-hoon and Eun-jo, had also arrived. Si-hoon blinked several times and stammered, everyone got here so quickly. Everyone laughed and replied that Iona helped us. She was so happy that she was shy and didn't say anything. It's not like a dragon can carry dozens of people. Eun-jo excitedly walked forward to call Si-hoon, with a hot temper like ice cream, screaming loudly and asking, "Oh, where is Konggu?" Si-hoon hesitantly lowered his eyes, not daring to look straight. Mr. Konggu has already arrived at the crack. On the other side of the ghostly crack, a young man with a familiar floral shirt and striped pants is standing in the middle of the chaos. Hearing the noise, Baek Kong-yun turned and looked back. It turned out to be Kong Ji-yu coming. He immediately spoke in a friendly voice. You came right after hearing the news. As you can see, the number too many people died. He ignored the nonsense greetings, not paying much attention to this talkative white-haired guy. The notable thing here is the body nearby. After looking carefully, Kong Ji-yu darkly confirmed that Manhwa had indeed logged out. Kong-yun is still rambling on and on. Anyway, it's good to see you here. His eyes looked at Kong Ji-yu, who suddenly became cold again, and raised his voice to command. First, kill the monsters first, then deal with the corpses. Kong Ji-yu rushed forward as fast as electricity and hit the white-haired man with a smoke-splashing blow, but did not cause any damage. His eyes completely changed. Kong-yun coldly questioned. When did you realize that, oh Kong Ji-yu? Remember, after we both arrived at my SU station, Kong Ji-yu loudly said I had other things to do. Si-hoon, you also go to work, so did. Seeing that his senior was so fierce, Si-hoon didn't dare to ask too much and just stammered out an answer. I understood and quickly turned around. Looking at the back of Si-hoon rushing alone and dangerously, Konggu's heart was also filled with something unknown. Worried? Probably not, boy. He has improved a lot and reached a high level. Ignoring that mess, Kong Ji-yu quickly jumped up to a high electric pole for convenient observation. Looking at the corpses lying haphazardly on the road, the young man angrily cursed, saying that the devilish bastard behind this was probably still nearby. There are so many dead people, he would never waste this much demon power. Kong Ji-yu closed his eyes and tried to concentrate, confident that he would find them. Immediately after that, he performed a skill that was all about power. But he kept looking for the devil's teachings not in the east, looking to the west it wasn't here either, and looking in the north-south direction was also no problem. Suddenly, Kong Ji-yu discovered something. As he ran past, the boy clearly dancing with the short sword was Oniri's Manhwa. Seeing that his fighting spirit was quite good, he felt puzzled. We didn't reveal anything to him, but the young man came so quickly. Having said that, he sighed and assessed that his information network was indeed impressive. Kong Ji-yu observed Manhwa for a long time. Although he didn't want to admit it, he couldn't find any traces of the demon guild anyway. The other boy was different. His hurried appearance as if he was trying to follow someone made him very suspicious. It seems this young man knows where he needs to go. Does he have any information about the person who caused this, or should I follow? On this side, Manhwa was busy running after the location, almost out of breath, secretly hoping that if the device I placed on the other guy pointed in the right direction, he would point around his pants somewhere near that strange gate. Following the instructions, Manhwa found a cracked gate and suddenly realized that the person he was looking for was indeed here. Hiding behind the car, he watched with his eyes all the inhumane acts of that cruel man. That unlucky man was bitten by the man using magic and screamed in pain in the air until his remaining strength was exhausted and he was thrown aside. Manhwa was so angry that he gritted his teeth and growled. Did he use kneeling force to slaughter him? Looking at Baek Kong Yun, he didn't say anything more and just stood still. At that moment Manhwa's voice suddenly rang out in her mind. I'm waiting for you. You're just following me and pretending to be my friend. Kong Yun turned around with a dark, friendly smile and said, from the beginning you already doubted me, right? Manhwa was told that their hearts were startled and confused. Immediately after that, he was grabbed by the neck by the guild leader and lifted up high, making it difficult for him to struggle. Even though he had a stealth technique, it had no effect in this case. Manhwa breathed with difficulty and asked why. Kong Yun smirked mischievously, adding words to finish the question, how'd I know? The evil path will bring power beyond what you can imagine. Having said that, he harshly scolded him for being stupid. The person who likes to pretend has just become too heroic. He should have known himself and been more vigilant. He also did not give up, trying to fight back to win. Not everyone likes to pretend. Knowing that he had already mentioned the topic, Manhwa smiled evilly and asked to continue, still feeling angry about losing to Furimoto Ryoma. He even used all his strength to scream and encourage him, who couldn't become a world-class ranker, so he got angry and behaved like this. Is what I said wrong? Being yelled at, he couldn't even caress his face, so Kong Yun stood still for a few seconds. When the story came to a halt, Manhwa was crushed and thrown to the ground like he was throwing away damaged goods. Kong Yun looked at the mumbling corpse in an irritated manner. I should have pushed demonic power into this saintly brat and made him suffer longer. Kong Wu arrived just in time to see everything but could not prevent the boy's death. Kong Gu's eyes flashed with potential, accurately reporting that the person in front of him was a member of the demon sect. He immediately launched his first attack, but the cunning guy discovered it and stopped it immediately. Kong Ji Yu jumped back. As soon as he touched the ground, he heard the other side ask in a joking voice, when did you realize that? He shouted loudly, recognizing your identity? Kong Wu gently raised his middle finger and continued in contempt. I can't waste time talking to trash-like people, get up. That vivid and concise answer was like a slap to the white-haired guy. Kong Yun, whose blue veins were all over, laughed for a while to calm down. Before his eyes, he flexed his ass muscles, flexed both his hands and released his magic into space, hissing loudly. Okay, I'll finish you off quickly. On this side, Kong Wu clenched his fist and used a steel power move, ready to respond. Whether the battle will be evenly matched, the two gangsters with black hair and white hair, who will be the winner, that will be clear later. Now both of them are full of enthusiasm and rush into solo hip-hop. In addition to steel punches, Kong Wu also uses the power of ice and the power of sea monsters, so the speed and pressure radiated are not simple. Continuously launching ice bullets at Kong Wu's body, making him growl and explode. Taking that opportunity, Kong Wu pulled out his long sword and attacked directly, but Kong Yun was lucky to block it. But this pent-up pressure is really annoying. He has to grit his teeth and try to endure it, babbling in evaluation. This guy is actually stronger than I thought. Kong Wu continued to raise the sword to demonstrate the blade's power. The power was so great that Kong Yun widened his eyes in horror and raised his hands to resist weakly. The explosion echoed throughout the sky and could still be clearly seen by Si-hoon's team several blocks away. Kong Yun was mad because he was constantly being overwhelmed. He gritted his teeth and climbed up. This time, the devil decided to play big, trying his best to lift the car up and swing it towards Kong Wu. Seeing that the car was approaching, Kong Wu solemnly used magic and immediately slashed the car in half right before his eyes. But when he raised his eyes to look back at the place where the car was split in two, Kong Wu realized that Kong Yun had taken advantage of the time and jumped up as high as ever. This kind of loophole is now a trick that makes the young man bitterly curl his lips and scold loudly, "You rude bastard." Kong Wu didn't waste time anymore and immediately used his heavenly power. I saw the white-haired man arrogantly rushing towards me. Kong Wu clenched his fists and combined with his destructive vacuum power, teasing him to make him angry. Then he unleashed all his skills to brighten his eyes. His eyes were also bright, but Kong Yun was not the average person. He put all his anger into this trick of breaking the sky and worshipping leprosy, rushing to compact with Kong Wu. Two huge streams of power collided, and a shocking explosion continued to reverberate throughout the city. As a result, Kong Yun was thrown several meters away and couldn't stop in time. The fight was over. Now Kong Yun raised his face and smiled and exclaimed, "I finally understand." Looking at the person who did not even wait for the dust to settle and took steps to anxiously deal with him, Kong Yun hissed in a harsh voice. "The person who has been causing trouble for us for so long is not Che Yun-jo." Saying that, he opened his mouth and smiled sinisterly, his eyes filled with endless hatred. He screamed, "That person was none other than you, O Kong Wu." Facing the cool and domineering charisma that didn't even touch him after the collision, Kong Yun shouted loudly and asked, "Who exactly is he?" At this time, black smoke rose into the sky. Several high-end buildings nearby were all dyed black. The scene was desolate, like Mrs. Wang Yi's apocalyptic prophecy. In that layer of dust, Kong Wu slowly walked forward, looked down at the name in front of him and asked in a low voice, "What do you mean?" Facing the cool Kong Wu, Kong Yun looked so poor that he squatted on the street and replied loudly that the person who hindered our plans was not Che Yun-jo but a human being. "Have you understood yet?" Having said that, Kong He-un smirked and sneered. "Che Yun-jo is very strong. She is one of the strongest people in Korea, but that's all." Anger made him sweat. He changed his tone and continued, "I felt strange. Why could she interfere in so many things? So I will ask you again." The surrounding space of fire and smoke became even more suffocating due to Kong Yun's pressure as he shouted loudly, "Oh Kong Wu, who are you?" "Wow, that sounds really funny." Kong Wu smirked and showed off his porcelain white teeth. But that smile attached to this boogeyman's face really scared the child into crying for 3 days and 3 nights. On top of that, there's the added bonus of a cold voice that sounds like it's hitting an underground ship. "Haven't I already answered you? I don't want to waste time talking to you. Can't you understand with your dog ears?" Having said that, Kong Wu threw magic at the large scythe and took a ready stance. Kong Yun was stunned. He stood up, stretched out his red arm, angrily betrayed her. "That's all. I don't think you will confess easily." Eng kept talking loudly all his head. Kong Wu put all his strength into casting magic that made his angry blood boil, making him muzzle forever. Immediately afterwards, the fiery exchange of magic caused a third explosion that shook the city. Both rankers rushed into solo boxing in the second round with terrible speed. The old man reassembled Kong Yun and continued to fly away the box truck that attacked Kong Wu. On this side, Kong Wu immediately swung his scythe and swept a powerful line of magic in response. The fatal counter damage not only crushed the car but also directly cut Kong Yun's shoulder blade. He hissed angrily, but what was that? What could be done? In that moment, Kong Yun was so angry that he distorted his avatar. The demon's eyes opened slightly to look at the black-haired man in front of him, unable to believe that no matter what move he threw, he could block it. Well, the male lead, right now Kong Wu even stretched out his arm to perform the same lightning magic for Kong Yun to admire, just ready for this friendly exchange to show off a bit. Kong Yun finally looked down at his well-equipped hand and laughed crazily. "Ha ha ha again. Oh no, this is good. You will be a perfect test subject." Kong Wu looks like that and you're confused. While he's fighting, he's laughing like crazy. It's like he's so strong that his nerves are shaking. Kong Yun continued to act crazy, laughing and waving his hands wildly in challenge. "Come here. I have enough fragments from the crack." Kong He-un looked up at the crack in the gate and laughed happily. The red gem from inside was slowly sucked out by his magic, and then immediately cracked and shattered. In front of Kong Wu's eyes now was Kong Hee-un, happily smiling arrogantly, spreading his arms to absorb the demonic power from the gem and the energy pouring out from the cracked gate. Squinting his eyes to look at the cracked gate, Kong Wu mumbled a guess. The shape of the crack had changed. The crack seemed to get bigger and the evil energy field inside it overflowed more massively. The surrounding air was quickly filled with strong demonic power. In the blink of an eye, Kong Wu seemed to see a group of hellish demons of all types with 1 horn, 1.5 horns or 2 horns peeking out from behind that aura, their tongues running greedily. In the blink of an eye, all the demons were absorbed by Kong Yun's tensed muscles, leaving not a single one. Kong Wu was startled and couldn't believe his eyes. All the demonic power was rushing towards Kong Yun. This bastard was not planning to do that. At this moment, Kong Yun's whole body seemed to be covered with a purple halo of demonic power. He grinned widely and raised his voice to provoke, come to me. Just a few short seconds later, his muscular six-pack body immediately transformed, wearing new equipment. First were the strange, sinewy wings like bat wings, then the red tail appeared long and pointed. Kong Wu held his breath. Only a few minutes had passed and he was so big. That's not all. Right now, when faced with his opponent's surprised eyes, the lump of flesh on his chest moved and sprouted 2 more horns. So here we go. Here's a close-up of the cool avatar of the red-headed demon Kong Yun with a handsome profile from hell. Not only that, he also shamelessly showed off his long fangs to Kong Wu. Kong Wu was startled and panicked. Damn it, what the hell is going on? He stared wide-eyed at the demon in front of him, his head full of questions. Where is the white-haired bastard? What is this red devil with 2 wings and 4 huge horns? Someone explain to Kong Wu? Could it be that he summoned a demon into his body? Is this just the soul of a demon? It must be said that the young man stood still for more than 2 seconds and still could not think of a satisfactory answer. Suddenly, the red devil's hand reached out and released a stream of power that grazed his shoulder, causing him to faint. That old attack punctured the entire wall behind Kong Wu, scaring him into a fever. The young man stood looking at the demon, growling, baring his teeth and licking his lips, expressing his secret expression. The red devil slightly tensed his arm muscles and growled and laughed, haha. It turns out this is the feeling. I'm so satisfied. It turned out that the punch was because Yun wanted to test his strength. At this moment, the red devil looked at Kong Wu, warmed his hands happily, grinned and said loudly, it's okay, it's okay. Having said that, Yun's eyes filled with deathly desire and commanded, let's fight again. Kong Wu frowned, gritted his teeth, and no matter how long he had been in hell, he was still bitter about this guy who now had time to practice crazy things. Immediately after that, the red devil Kong Yun flapped his wings and flew, rushing towards Kong Wu screaming loudly, go die, causing him to immediately fly backwards and take a defensive stance. Seeing that the black-haired man seemed frightened and unable to launch a counterattack in time, the red devil scowled and laughed triumphantly, then took the opportunity to stretch out his long arms and rush towards Kong Wu. But the black-haired young man just looked at him motionless for a long time, wondering what he was doing, his face strangely calm. The red devil did not care and immediately unleashed its fury, determined to destroy the cheeky black-haired man. But dream on, honey. Kong Wu is just pretending to tempt a monkey, but in reality he has already used the power of the sky to soar high a long time ago. Standing and watching the monster fight and gloat on the road surface, Kong Wu flying up here was happy to see. The happiest thing was when Yun finished fighting and discovered there was nothing down there. Having wasted a lot of time, Kong Wu coldly laughed and said, I will finish you off in 1 minute. Saying that, he used all his strength to release Raken's rage to attack the red devil's left side, then turned around and combined the power of heavenly attack, punching him hard on his right cheek, causing him to completely distort. Red Devil Yun felt like his jaw was twisted. He stood with his face to one side, breathless, causing Kong Wu to ask in confusion, what, is that enough to show you? Saying that, Kong Wu turned around and launched a wave of magic straight at the red devil, creating a shocking explosion, echoing gold throughout the streets. Not stopping there, Kong Wu curled his hands into a defensive stance and sharply slashed his scythe, launching magic diagonally forward. This time, he enthusiastically jumped forward and pressed the scythe directly at the red devil, leaving no room for escape. Oh wait, why is this devil being punished so much that he keeps baring his sharp teeth and laughing happily? The laughter got louder and louder until water splashed everywhere and he was still laughing. Occasionally, the red devil stretched out his long clawed arm and grabbed the hem of Kong Wu's shirt, tugging at it, making him frown in confusion. Before Kong Wu could get back at the red devil, the scythe in his hand suddenly disappeared into thin air. Not only that, he was startled and screamed when he began to realize that his demonic power was dissipating. What was going on? Now Red Devil Kong Yun started to laugh even louder. Ha ha ha, you fell into a trap. I knew it would be like this, you're too hasty. The eyes looking at Kong Wu now sparkled with sinisterness, and he said loudly, perhaps you don't know, this is the power of the devil, look at my blocking power. What? Kong Wu listened and stood there dumbfounded. Cold sweat broke out. Kong Wu couldn't believe what he heard and exclaimed in shock. Power blockade. The red devil looked at Kong Wu and smiled brightly. His player power was blocked. At this time, the power of the sky also gradually disappeared. Kong Wu began to freely fall to the ground, making him even more happy, without knowing that he had just squeezed his own balls, looking down at his red devil clone, grabbing his arm tightly. Right mine. Kong Wu blushed furiously, gritted his teeth, and climbed up to realize that not only had he lost his player power, he couldn't even feel any demonic power in his body anymore. Red Devil Kong Yun stood looking at Kong Wu struggling and trembling to remove his clone, then he grinned triumphantly. Ha ha ha, you can't escape my claws. Saying that, it stomped its feet on the ground in a defensive stance, then suddenly rushed forward and threw Kong Wu a few meters away until his back touched an obstacle before stopping. Kong Wu bitterly sat on the ground, hugging his tightly held arm and growling. The situation was bad. The red devil laughed gleefully and mocked, it was useless. So what, does it look pretty? Oh Kong Wu. He slowly walked in front of Kong Wu and said in a sarcastic voice, I know those people who are as rude as you. At that moment, his eyes must have flashed with anger and hatred as he said that he would die. You all are stupid and think this world belongs to you. They are all a bunch of arrogant, evil and always proud people. In the memories of the Red Devils, the image of Kong Wu before and now was an extremely bold and deceitful person. That's why he did not hesitate to scold him. While speaking, he suddenly became silent, his eyes flashing crimson, looking at Kong Wu. Too fast and too dangerous, the Red Devil's big arm reached out and grabbed Kong Wu's entire head and squeezed tightly, making him unable to react. Seeing that, the Red Devil smiled arrogantly and shouted loudly, it's time for you to pay the price. Kong Wu was like a fish lying on a cutting board trying to struggle desperately. At the moment his life was like a thread hanging on a bell. From a distance came urgent footsteps. It turned out to be the baby dragon X Iona. She was extremely worried, clenched her fists and ran through the wind, calling out loudly to Kong Wu. On this side, Kong Wu heard the baby dragon's sound and was startled as if he saw a ray of hope. Seeing that the ferocious Red Devil was bullying his beloved master, X Iona became angry and immediately threw out his hands and threw magic at the demon, screaming loudly. The other guys stayed away from Kong Wu. But the spell had just finished being cast, but before it could be released, it instantly disappeared into thin air, scaring the girl to death. What was that? Looking at it, Kong Wu immediately understood what happened to the baby dragon. His demonic power had been blocked, so it probably couldn't use his power. His power is the source of demonic power for X Iona. Red Devil Kong Yun saw her like that and smiled sarcastically. Oh, you're the kid I saw the other day. Saying that, he turned around to look at X Iona, began to show his sharp teeth and smiled to get acquainted. It seemed that he was also close to Kong Wu. After finishing speaking, the Red Devil forcefully threw Kong Wu to the ground like he was throwing away an old toy and happily said in a loud voice, I wonder what his face will look like. Quick as lightning, the Red Devil ran in shock, grabbed little X Iona, lifted him up and threatened, if I crush that person in front of his eyes, I don't know how distorted that face will be. The little girl coughed and still tried to protest fiercely, shouting, "Let me go." Kong-woo remained silent and could not say a word, only to see him slowly stand up and reach out to pick up the broken sword. From behind, his voice sounded very slow and different from usual. "Will you behave properly?" That voice made the little dragon who was screaming against the red devils suddenly shut up and look over in bewilderment. Its owner Kong-woo seemed to have transformed into another person, pointing his broken sword at the red devil, his cold face and a strange growl in his voice. "Looking at the person now, I feel ashamed." But the red devil did not feel scared, on the contrary, he grinned and threw away enzymes as if something was not funny. "Ha ha ha, what can you do if your power has been blocked?" Kong-woo's eyes hardened, his hand quickly swung the sword high, aimed straight at the turtle's arm and shouted loudly. "No way." Seeing Kong-woo's series of actions, the red devil widened his eyes and completely stopped laughing and started sweating. Iona also gasped in surprise. The right arm whose power was blocked by the red devils was severed and lying on the ground. Red blood spewed out from there, smearing red and soaking a patch. In such a situation, Kong-woo is still as calm as anything. "You want to know who I am, right? Okay, let me tell you." As he spoke, he grinned wickedly and looked at the red devil roughly. Kong Yun witnessed a spectacular scene and stood there dumbfounded. He began to feel nervous. This bastard, he cut off his own hand to remove the blockade. Although he still held the baby dragon tightly in his hand, the red devil's eyes still could not take his eyes off the strange black-haired man who was gradually approaching him while recovering his magic. The demonic power immediately returned to Kong-woo's body after his arm was cut down. His body ached, but he secretly calculated that demon power was indeed flowing through his body again. But having used too much power and not enough demon power left, the Kraken's rampage ended. "I lost an arm, so I'm still at a disadvantage." The red devil started to speak contemptuously. "That stubborn bastard, you're already like that. So what else do you think you can do?" Then he immediately threw Iona away. Kong Ji-yu took in all the challenges and extravagant actions. He secretly thought he didn't want to use it, but he had no other choice. "Never mind, it doesn't matter. I knew one day I would have to use it." Thinking of that, the corner of Kong-woo's mouth curled up wickedly, and his stumped right arm began to melt under the flow of magic. He also raised his unidentified arm in front of his face, smirking and showing off. He looks like that on the outside, but on the inside he's just as proud. No matter why he provoked the wrong demon king, Kong-woo decided to play with the power that was most suitable for him. His inner vision was rolling with fierce waves. Behind him were 3 wooden doors. The water under his feet began to rise like his anger at this time. He would use a combination of his greedy powers. Kong-woo's face was cold. His sharp eyes clearly showed determination. His lips pursed tightly, pondering something. Even though he had finally made up his mind to grab the doorknob, Kong-woo was not in a hurry to turn it but looked down thoughtfully. In fact, he still hadn't finished thinking about whether or not it would be better to open the door. "But the current situation is so extreme. I have to take a risk and just open the door slightly. 100,000 magic cores. Officially open the first door, open." Back to the present, Kong-woo's body, starting from his legs, seemed to inexplicably melt. The dark magic flow slowly covered his entire body, witnessing a scene more terrifying than himself. The red devil opened his mouth and stood still for a few seconds, stuttering speechlessly, his big horny head full of questions. "What is that?" I had to stand still and watch that black-haired brat transform. But the strange thing didn't just happen to Kong-woo. Even though he found it hard to believe, he was also jumping up and down with joy. "I don't know what happened, but my claws have recovered. So what are you waiting for without fighting?" The red devil quickly rushed like an arrow towards Kong-woo and shouted loudly, "Everything is over here." But when his massive fist swung out, it somehow pierced Kong-woo's body. The red devil saw Kong-woo's limp and flabby appearance, so he grinned mockingly. "Ha ha ha. I thought you were planning something. You've turned into a slam." Iona saw this and was heartbroken with tears in her eyes and screamed miserably, "Kong-woo. But life is not like a dream. The red devil laughed halfway and immediately woke up, suddenly realizing how strange the phenomenon before his eyes was. Kong Wu's soft head was punched and instantly dissolved, but it was like fog. It instantly took shape and stood before his eyes in perfect form. Not only that, that body can also instantly melt into a ghostly black shadow that covers the red devil's sharp red hand. Kong Yun began to look confusedly at the teacher all over his body. A series of strange shapes sprouted from that ghostly shadow as he stammered loudly, "What is this? Is that mouth?" Kong Wu's hoarse voice immediately spoke up to argue with him. "Oh no honey, those are countless mouths." Hearing this sentence, the red-legged devil stood up and looked into the air without moving. His whole body was covered by a dark shadow, ready to be swallowed whole. The scene before her eyes was so horrifying that Iona raised her hands and mouth to try to stop her scream. And no matter how loud she screamed, the red devil's pitiful screams as she exploded and fell with the buildings would surely overwhelm everything.